My parents lied to cops to cover for my stealing sister after she emptied my bank account, so my brothers and I cut them all off forever. 2 years later, they're begging us to fix the family, but we're done playing their game. I'm the oldest of 7 kids, 4 siblings, since my mom kept having babies until she finally got the daughter she always wanted. My brothers and I have always been really close, but it had nothing to do with hobbies we shared, or even school stuff. No, it was a trauma bond. You see, we realized pretty early on that our parents didn't give an F about us. Whenever one of us spilled anything, or asked for a second plate of food, they'd always say the same thing. Why couldn't you have been born a girl? At first they'd say it under their breaths, but after Lily was born they gave up on that courtesy, because it was clear that she was the child they always wanted. On the first day she came home from the hospital as a newborn baby, she pushed my youngest brother Michael off the couch because she was jealous. Totally normal, and I expected my parents to simply make sure Michael was okay. So I was horrified when instead they went over and laughed at him. "Wow, Lily, you are so smart," my dad exclaimed, like her violence was something that was inexplicably beautiful. "Yes, do it again," my mom yelled, before putting them both on the couch together and getting Lily to knock him off again. And when I tried to wrap my arms around Michael, to protect him from the pain I knew so well, they made fun of me. After that, Michael became more like my son than my brother. Because even though my other 2 brothers were just as hated, I knew they always had each other so they would be okay. But Michael? He only had me. So I never gave in to the whole propaganda thing of worshiping Lily like she was some sort of celebrity. I never just thought it was okay for Michael to be forgotten about, for his birthdays to be uncelebrated, to let him cry alone in his room at just 6 years old to toughen him up. And even though I was just 5 years older than him, I actually had a lot of wisdom to give. I raised him to be a hard worker, someone who prioritizes focus and discipline over dumb high school drama. He grew to be an academic weapon, so I wasn't even surprised when he graduated as valedictorian of his grade. Meanwhile, Lily, who was also in his grade, graduated with a 1.2, GPA, 4 ex-boyfriends, and nothing to show for her time than a high Snapchat score. But still, at their graduation, I was the only one to cheer for Michael. Meanwhile, when Lily came on stage, my parents screamed so hard I thought their lungs were about to fall out of their throats. My parents insisted on fully funding Lily's community college tuition and told Michael he would have to pay every penny. By this point, Lily was a spoiled, entitled brat. So when she heard this news, she just smirked and said, "It's about time he learned to do something by himself for once." It was painfully obvious that the real world was going to eat her alive. And of course, I was right. Because 2 months later, I got a call from Lily. I instantly knew something was very wrong because she was being extremely polite to me without even asking me for anything. "Lily, what's going on?" I asked. My tone was impatient and a little rude. She told me that my parents had given her walking around money for the entire year, until May, at college. This equated to $50K. My heart dropped. "I spent the entire thing and now I have nothing. Can you help me?" I instantly hung up. These were the same parents who didn't let me shower more than twice a week to save money. The same parents who didn't let any of my brothers eat more than a single portion of food at dinner. I thought we were *T broke. But I didn't blame Lily. I blamed my parents. Because they're adults, and they were the reason Lily is, well, Lily. Except things didn't finish there. Because Lily took my rejection as a reason to start a personal vendetta against me. 2 days later, I noticed that my entire bank account had been drained. All in one transfer. I was sitting in my small apartment when I saw it, the one I'd worked so hard to afford. I'd just gotten home from a double shift, my feet aching in my worn work shoes. I'd kicked them off and collapsed onto my secondhand couch, pulling out my phone to check if my paycheck had cleared yet. That's when I saw it. I stared at my phone screen, blinking hard to make sure I wasn't seeing things. My account balance read $0. My hands started shaking so badly I dropped my phone onto my lap. This couldn't be happening. I had just over $3,400 in there, my rent money, grocery money, and the small emergency fund I'd been building. All gone. The room seemed to spin around me. The $3,400 represented countless early mornings, late nights, skipped lunches, and passed up social invitations. Every dollar had been earned through sacrifice and discipline, the very values I'd taught Michael. Now it had vanished in an instant. I called my bank immediately, my voice cracking as I explained the situation to the customer service rep. She put me on hold to check the transaction details. Those 5 minutes of waiting felt like 5 hours, my stomach twisting tighter with each passing second. The hold music played in my ear, a cheerful melody that felt like a cruel joke against the backdrop of my panic. I paced my small living room, the worn carpet rough under my bare feet. 3 steps one way, 3 steps back, the limited space of my apartment suddenly feeling like a cage. My mind raced through possibilities, a bank error, identity theft, a mistake I'd somehow made. But deep down, I already knew. When she finally returned, her voice was professionally sympathetic as she confirmed my worst fears. There was a single wire transfer made yesterday afternoon to an account at First National Bank, authorized using my online banking credentials. The customer service representative's voice faded in and out as she explained the details. Transaction time was 2:17 p.m., confirmation code sent to your email, successfully authenticated. Each word was another nail in the coffin of my financial security. I glanced at my calendar on the wall. Yesterday at 2:17 p.m., I had been in a team meeting at work, my phone tucked away in my desk drawer, completely unaware that my financial life was being dismantled. I insisted I hadn't authorized anything, explaining I was at work during that time. The representative assured me they would open a fraud investigation, but warned it could take up to 10 business days to resolve. 10 business days. I mentally calculated my upcoming bills. Rent due in a week, utilities 3 days after that, not to mention groceries and gas. The small digital clock on my microwave seemed to mock me, each minute ticking away, bringing me closer to financial ruin. I thanked the representative, my voice hollow, and ended the call. My phone buzzed with a text just as I ended the call. It was Lily. No message, just a photo of her lounging by a hotel pool with a fruity drink in hand. The caption read, "College life is stressful. Needed a break." The photo showed Lily in designer sunglasses, her perfectly manicured nails wrapped around a glass with a tiny umbrella. Behind her was a crystal blue pool surrounded by palm trees, clearly not the community college campus where she was supposedly struggling with classes. The sunlight glinted off what looked like a new gold bracelet on her wrist. My money. My hard-earned money was now adorning her wrist and funding her poolside vacation. My blood boiled as I stared at the image, the connection instantly clear. She was taunting me, flaunting what she'd done with my money. I texted back demanding she return my money immediately, informing her the bank was investigating the fraud. My fingers trembled with rage as I typed, making numerous errors I had to go back and correct. The small apartment suddenly felt stifling, and I threw open the window, letting in the cool evening air. A siren wailed in the distance, matching the alarm bells ringing in my head. Her reply came almost instantly, feigning ignorance and suggesting I should be more careful with my passwords, followed by a mocking kiss emoji that made my teeth clench. "No idea what you're talking about, big bro. Maybe you should use better passwords than Michael's birthday. So predictable." The casual cruelty of her message made my stomach turn. Not only had she stolen from me, but she'd weaponized my love for Michael to do it. That's when it hit me. 3 months ago, Lily had asked to borrow my laptop to finish a school project when she visited. I'd stepped out to grab us lunch, leaving her alone with my computer for almost an hour. She must have installed something to track my keystrokes or accessed my saved passwords. I remembered that day clearly now. It had been raining, fat droplets pattering against my apartment windows. Lily had shown up unannounced, claiming her laptop had died and she had an assignment due. Against my better judgment, I'd let her in, even offered to make her tea while she worked. She'd declined the tea but asked if I could grab us lunch from the deli down the street. "Take your time," she'd said with a smile that now seemed sinister in retrospect. "This might take a while." I'd been gone maybe 45 minutes, returning with sandwiches to find her casually browsing social media, claiming she'd already finished her work. I spent the next hour in a panic, changing every password I had, setting up 2-factor authentication, and scanning my devices for spyware. Then I called Michael, who reacted with appropriate outrage when I explained the situation. He pointed out that her text was incriminating evidence and urged me to report her to the police. Michael's voice was steady and mature beyond his years as he talked me through the practical steps I needed to take. I could hear him moving around his dorm room, the sound of drawers opening and closing as he multitasked, likely gathering his own financial documents to make sure they were secure. "Document everything," he advised. "Screenshot her texts, the bank statement, everything. This isn't just theft, it's identity theft. It's a felony." I hesitated, torn between family loyalty and the need for justice. The next day, I drove to my parents' house, rehearsing what I would say. The drive to my parents' house was tense, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. I passed familiar landmarks, the elementary school Michael and I had attended, the park where I'd taught him to ride a bike when our parents couldn't be bothered, the ice cream shop where we'd celebrate his good grades with the cheapest cone they sold. Each sight strengthened my resolve to stand up for what was right. I expected them to be shocked, maybe even apologetic about raising such an entitled daughter. I was wrong. Their house looked the same as always, well-maintained on the outside, a perfect facade hiding the dysfunction within. The garden was immaculate, with fresh mulch and blooming flowers that my mother tended to with more care than she'd ever shown her sons. I parked behind my father's new SUV, another reminder of the financial disparities I was just beginning to understand. My mother answered the door with a tight smile that disappeared when she saw my expression. I didn't bother with pleasantries, immediately telling her that Lily had taken every cent from my bank account and that I needed their help getting it back. The living room was exactly as I remembered, family photos covering the walls, though I noticed with a pang that most featured Lily alone, or with our parents. The few that included the boys were group shots where we were positioned on the edges, almost as afterthoughts. The familiar scent of my mother's potpourri hung in the air, sickeningly sweet and artificial. My father appeared behind her, arms crossed defensively, suggesting that if I'd helped Lily when she needed it, she wouldn't have had to take matters into her own hands. His face, with its familiar stern lines and perpetual disapproval, showed not a hint of concern for my situation. He stood in his perfectly pressed khakis and polo shirt, the picture of suburban respectability, while defending what amounted to felony theft. The hypocrisy was staggering. I stood there, mouth open in disbelief as my mother dismissively claimed they didn't know Lily had done anything wrong, and accused me of being jealous of the attention Lily received. "You've always been jealous of your sister," my mother said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Ever since she was born, you've tried to compete with her. It's not becoming." She smoothed her cardigan, a nervous habit I recognized from childhood confrontations. "Besides, family helps family. If Lily needed money, you should have given it to her." The conversation deteriorated rapidly from there, ending with me storming out in frustrated tears. As I left, I noticed a framed photo I hadn't seen before. Lily in a cap and gown at her high school graduation, my parents beaming beside her. There was no corresponding photo of Michael in his valedictorian regalia, no proud display of his academic achievements. This final slight fueled my anger as I slammed the door behind me. By the time I got home, I discovered I'd been removed from the family group chat and blocked by both parents on social media. My phone, which had been buzzing with notifications during the drive home, suddenly went silent. I checked the family group chat. "You can no longer send messages to this group," appeared on my screen. A quick check of my parents' profiles showed the blocked user message. They had digitally excised me from the family for daring to challenge Lily's behavior. Later that evening, I received texts from my two middle brothers, Jason and Thomas, asking what happened. They were shocked but admitted they felt powerless to stand up to our parents. Jason's text came first. "Mom and Dad are saying you accused Lily of stealing? What's going on?" Then Thomas. "They're really upset, bro. Dad's talking about ungrateful children again. Are you okay?" Their messages held the familiar tone of walking on eggshells, the survival mechanism we'd all developed growing up in that house. Michael called me that night, and before I could even finish explaining my financial situation, he'd sent me $1,200, nearly everything he had saved for tuition. I promised to pay him back as tears streamed down my face, but he simply reminded me that we take care of each other, as we always had. "We're brothers," he said, his voice firm despite his youth. "This is what we do." I could hear the determination in his voice, the same resolve that had gotten him through years of being overlooked and undervalued. In that moment, I felt both immense pride in the man he was becoming and deep sadness that he had to grow up so fast. The next morning brought a new crisis when I couldn't log into my work email. A call to IT revealed someone had attempted to access our company server using my credentials, triggering an automatic security lockdown. The IT specialist, a woman named Priya with a gentle voice and technical expertise, walked me through what had happened. "The login attempts came from an IP address in the next county over," she explained. "They tried several password combinations before the system locked them out." My blood ran cold as I realized how far Lily was willing to go, not just stealing my money, but potentially jeopardizing my career. I explained the situation to my boss, showing him time-stamped proof I was in a meeting when the login attempt occurred. He believed me but warned that I needed to resolve my personal issues before they affected my job performance. My boss, a normally understanding man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and reading glasses perpetually perched on his nose, frowned as he reviewed the evidence I'd presented. "I believe you," he said finally.
leaning back in his chair. "But this company can't afford security breaches. Fix this, whatever it is." The implicit threat hung in the air. My job, the only source of income I had left, was now at risk because of Lily's vendetta. That evening, Jason and Thomas came to my apartment. We spent hours piecing together years of Lily's manipulations, times when items went missing, rumors spread, relationships damaged. We'd always dismissed these incidents individually, but together they formed a clear pattern of calculated behavior that had been happening since childhood. My small living room became command central as we spread out years of evidence across the coffee table, floor, and kitchen counter. Jason, always the organized one, created a timeline on my whiteboard. Thomas, with his sharp memory for details, recalled incidents I'd long forgotten. The time my high school girlfriend suddenly broke up with me after Lily accidentally showed her fake texts from my phone, the soccer trophy that mysteriously disappeared the day before a family gathering where I planned to show it off. Thomas realized aloud that she'd been doing this her whole life, and our parents had been enabling it every step of the way. "Remember when I got accepted to that summer science program?" Thomas said, his voice quiet with realization. "And suddenly Mom and Dad couldn't afford it, but 2 weeks later Lily got that expensive phone?" He shook his head, connecting dots we'd all been too conditioned to see. "They weren't just playing favorites. They were actively sabotaging us to build her up." A week later, Jason discovered through a mutual friend that Lily had a new boyfriend, a well-off student named Ethan, whose parents owned several local businesses. We decided I would send an anonymous message to Ethan, simply suggesting he be careful about lending money or sharing passwords. Jason showed me Ethan's social media profile, a clean-cut young man with an easy smile and expensive clothes. His recent post showed him and Lily at upscale restaurants and exclusive clubs. One photo showed Lily wearing a necklace that looked suspiciously like one I'd seen in our grandmother's jewelry box, a family heirloom that had supposedly been lost years ago. The warning backfired spectacularly. Lily somehow figured out I was behind it and told university administrators that Michael had been stalking and threatening her on campus. He was called into a disciplinary meeting that could have derailed his academic career. Michael called me from outside the administration building, his voice tight with controlled panic. "They won't tell me exactly what she's accused me of," he said. "Just that there's been a serious complaint about threatening behavior." I could hear the fear beneath his calm exterior. Everything he'd worked for was suddenly at risk because of Lily's lies. Thankfully, one of Lily's former friends, Zoe, provided screenshots proving Lily had fabricated the entire story. Zoe, a petite girl with bright blue hair and multiple piercings, had been Lily's roommate briefly before their falling out. "She did the same thing to me," Zoe explained when she met with Michael and me at a coffee shop near campus. "Made up stories, took my things, tried to turn my friends against me. I've been keeping receipts ever since." She slid her phone across the table, showing us a text conversation where Lily explicitly outlined her plan to get Michael in trouble as revenge for the warning to Ethan. The situation escalated when Thomas discovered a GoFundMe page Lily had created, claiming she was escaping an abusive family situation. The page featured carefully edited photos of old bruises from a skiing accident years ago and raised over $3,000 before we could report it with evidence of fraud. The page was taken down, but Lily faced no real consequences. The GoFundMe page was slickly produced, with professional-looking graphics and a heartbreaking story about supposed physical and emotional abuse. "My brothers have made my life a living hell," the description read. "Now they're trying to prevent me from getting an education and escaping their control." Reading those words on Thomas's laptop screen, seeing our family history completely inverted, made me physically ill. My financial situation was becoming dire. My landlord was surprisingly understanding, but he could only give me an extra week before late fees kicked in. Then my car wouldn't start one morning, the mechanic confirming someone had put sugar in the gas tank. The repair would cost nearly $800. The mechanic, an older man with grease-stained hands and honest eyes, showed me the damage. "Never seen sugar do this much harm," he said, pointing to the corroded fuel system. "Someone really had it out for you." I stood in the repair shop, the smell of oil and rubber filling my nostrils, wondering how much more Lily could take from me before she was satisfied. I filed a police report and installed a security camera outside my apartment, feeling like I was living in a state of siege. The police officer who took my report was professionally sympathetic, but not particularly hopeful. "Family disputes are complicated," she said, her pen moving efficiently across her notepad. Without direct evidence linking your sister to the vandalism, there's not much we can do. I nodded, understanding the reality but still feeling abandoned by yet another system that should provide protection. 2 weeks after the initial theft, the bank finally concluded their investigation and confirmed they would refund my money. That's when our Aunt Kathleen called me, beginning the conversation by accusing me of spreading lies about Lily based on what my mother had told her. Aunt Kathleen had always been my mother's closest ally, echoing her opinions and reinforcing her decisions. Her voice on the phone was sharp with disapproval. "Your mother is heartbroken over how you're treating your sister. After everything they've done for you boys." The familiar refrain made my teeth clench. The implication that providing basic necessities to your children was some extraordinary act of generosity that required lifelong gratitude. After I explained the situation and sent her evidence, she became an unexpected ally, creating ripples through the extended family as she questioned my parents' version of events. The shift in Aunt Kathleen's tone was dramatic once she reviewed the evidence I'd emailed her. "I had no idea," she said, her voice now hushed with shock. "Your mother always made it sound like you boys were difficult and Lily was the easy child." I could hear her shuffling papers, likely looking through the bank statements and screenshots I'd sent. "This isn't right. None of this is right." Michael called me in a panic one evening to tell me Lily had shown up at his dorm crying, claiming she wanted to make amends. After he turned her away, he overheard her on the phone telling someone he had pushed and threatened her. "She was waiting outside my door when I got back from the library," Michael explained, his voice tight with stress, all tears and apologies, saying she wanted to fix our relationship. He described how he'd politely but firmly asked her to leave, then watched through his peephole as she immediately dropped the act, pulling out her phone with a smirk. I heard her clearly saying I'd shoved her against the wall and threatened to make her pay. It was surreal. She was creating the narrative in real time. The next morning, I received an anonymous email threatening that Michael would lose his scholarship if I didn't back off. The email arrived at 3:17 a.m., its threatening tone made more ominous by the late hour. "Your brother's academic future depends on your cooperation," it read. "The scholarship committee would be very interested to learn about his harassment of fellow students. Back off now." The message was sent from a generic email address, but the writing style, with its dramatic flair and excessive punctuation, was unmistakably Lily's. We needed leverage. Michael managed to access Lily's old email account, where we found years of correspondence between Lily and our parents discussing money transfers and even instructions on how to manipulate situations to her advantage. Michael explained how he'd remembered Lily using the same password across multiple platforms, a combination of her birth month and our mother's maiden name. "She never thought anyone would try to access her accounts," he said as we scrolled through the emails. "She doesn't realize that her greatest weakness is thinking she's smarter than everyone else." One email from just after my bank account was drained had Lily writing that I couldn't prove anything because she'd used a VPN and my own computer to do it. "Got it done today," Lily had written to our mother. "Used his own laptop through a VPN so it can't be traced back to me. The best part is he'll never be able to prove it was me." Our mother's response was equally disturbing. "Clever girl. He should have helped you when you asked. Maybe this will teach him a lesson about family loyalty." Reading those words, seeing the explicit approval of theft and fraud, was the final confirmation of how twisted our family dynamic truly was. I compiled everything into a detailed document and created a private blog with password protection, sending the link to trusted family members. The response was immediate. Relatives began distancing themselves from our parents. Lily's boyfriend broke up with her, and without unlimited financial support, she struggled to maintain her lifestyle. The document ran to over 30 pages, meticulously organized with dates, screenshots, and explanations. I worked on it for 3 straight days, fueled by coffee and righteous anger, determined to create an undeniable record of the truth. When it was complete, I sent the password-protected link to select relatives: Aunt Kathleen, our grandparents, 2 uncles who had always been kind to us boys, and a few cousins we were close with. 3 weeks later, my mother asked to meet. She claimed they didn't know how bad things had gotten with Lily, but I corrected her, pointing out that they knew perfectly well but simply didn't care as long as it wasn't affecting them. We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop halfway between our homes. My mother looked smaller somehow, her carefully maintained appearance showing signs of strain. Dark circles under her eyes, a button misaligned on her cardigan, small details that revealed the cracks in her perfect facade. "We just want to fix this," she said, her voice lacking its usual confidence. We're still a family. They promised to cut off Lily's extra funding and help Michael with college. But that evening, I received a threatening letter from Lily claiming I'd only made things worse for myself by turning everyone against her. The letter arrived by certified mail, Lily making sure I couldn't claim I hadn't received it. The envelope contained 3 pages of accusations, threats, and vitriol, the handwriting becoming increasingly erratic as the letter progressed. "You've ruined everything," she wrote on the final page. "You think you've won, but you have no idea what I'm capable of. This isn't over." The final straw came when Michael discovered that Lily had applied for a job at his company, listing me as a reference using a slightly altered version of my name. Michael forwarded the information to HR along with documentation of her previous false claims. The HR director, a woman Michael had built a good relationship with during his internship, called him directly about the application. "Something seemed off," she explained. "The reference letter was enthusiastic but vague, and the contact information was similar to yours but not exact." Michael immediately recognized it as another of Lily's schemes, this time attempting to infiltrate his workplace, possibly to cause more damage. For the first time, Lily's actions had real consequences. She was blacklisted from the company. Weeks later, Michael spotted her working at a local coffee shop, the kind of minimum wage job she'd always looked down on. He simply texted me, "Karma finally caught up." The text included a photo taken discreetly through the coffee shop window. There was Lily, wearing a standard-issue apron, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail instead of her usual elaborate style, serving customers with a fixed smile. There was no malice in Michael's message, just a quiet acknowledgement that actions eventually have consequences. I wish I could say this was the end of our family drama, but real life isn't that neat. What did change was us. The 4 brothers grew closer, creating our own support system. We celebrated holidays together, helped each other through challenges, and built the family we deserved. Our first brothers-only Thanksgiving was held in my apartment. We pushed my small dining table against the wall and sat on cushions around my coffee table, each of us contributing what we could to the meal. Jason brought store-bought rolls and canned cranberry sauce. Thomas made a surprisingly good green bean casserole. Michael, still in his dorm, could only manage to bring sodas and paper plates. I tackled the turkey, a small one that barely fit in my oven, and made lumpy but delicious mashed potatoes. Nothing matched, nothing was perfect, but it was the best holiday meal any of us had ever had. I learned that sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family that deserves you. Sometimes you have to build your own. And sometimes standing up for yourself isn't just about winning, it's about refusing to play a rigged game any longer. This realization came gradually, like the slow brightening of dawn after a long, dark night. Each time we chose to support each other, each time we celebrated a success or comforted each other through a setback, we were actively creating the family bonds that should have been our birthright. The weight of seeking approval from parents who would never give it began to lift from my shoulders, replaced by the genuine connection I felt with my brothers. The road hasn't been easy. My parents still occasionally try to guilt us into family gatherings, usually when extended relatives are visiting and they need to maintain appearances. Last Christmas, they sent elaborate gifts to all of us, which felt more like bribes than genuine expressions of love. Michael and I returned them unopened. Jason and Thomas kept theirs, but donated the equivalent value to a charity supporting victims of financial abuse. The gifts arrived in matching silver paper with elaborate bows, clearly professionally wrapped. Mine contained an expensive watch with an inscription on the back. "Family is forever." The irony wasn't lost on me. Michael's package held a laptop, the very tool he needed for school that they had refused to help him purchase months earlier. We packaged them back up the same day they arrived, adding a simple note: "No thank you." We've established clear boundaries now. I only communicate with my parents through email, keeping records of everything. Lily has made several attempts to re-enter our lives, each time with a seemingly heartfelt apology that inevitably turns into a request for money or favors. We've learned to recognize the pattern. Her most recent attempt came last month, a tearful phone call to Thomas claiming she'd changed and wanted to make amends. He listened politely, then asked her to demonstrate her sincerity by apologizing to Michael directly for the false accusations she'd made against him. She immediately became defensive, blaming misunderstandings and overreactions, revealing that her remorse was as shallow as ever. The most important change has been in Michael. He graduated college with honors and received a full scholarship for graduate school. At his graduation dinner, Surrounded by his brothers and the chosen family we've built, he thanked me for being the parent he needed when our actual parents failed. There wasn't a dry eye at the table. We celebrated at a modest Italian restaurant near campus, the kind with checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles. Michael stood to make a toast, his graduation cap still perched on his head, his eyes bright with emotion. "To my brother," he said, raising his glass toward me, "who taught me that family is about actions, not blood. Who showed me what it means to truly care for someone. Who was my parent when I needed one most." The lump in my throat made it impossible to respond with words, but the tight hug we shared said everything necessary. Thomas and Jason have their own success stories. Thomas found his passion in counseling and now works with young adults from dysfunctional families. Jason, always the most reserved of us, has become an advocate for financial literacy, teaching workshops on how to protect yourself from identity theft and financial abuse. Thomas's office is a warm, inviting space with comfortable chairs and soft lighting. On his desk sits a small frame with a quote, "Be the person you needed when you were younger." It perfectly captures the mission he's embraced, using our difficult past to help others navigate their own challenging family dynamics. Jason's transformation has been perhaps the most surprising. Once so quiet he could go entire family gatherings without speaking, he now stands confidently before groups of people, sharing practical advice about protecting financial assets and recognizing signs of financial control and abuse. "I was silent for too long," he told me once. "Now I speak for those who still can't find their voice." As for me, I've learned that family is defined by actions, not blood. I've found peace in creating strong boundaries and building relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. My apartment, once just a place to sleep, has become a true home. Photos of my brothers and our chosen family line the walls. Weekend dinners around my small table, now expanded with a leaf to accommodate our growing circle, have become a cherished tradition. The sound of genuine laughter fills these rooms, so different from the tense, walking on eggshells atmosphere of our childhood home. I still have moments of anger when I think about all those years of inequality, of watching Michael cry himself to sleep, of scraping by while Lily was showered with everything she wanted. But those moments grow fewer with time. Sometimes the anger surfaces unexpectedly, when I see a father patiently teaching his son to ride a bike in the park, or when a colleague mentions a family vacation where their parents paid for everything. The familiar heat rises in my chest, the questions of "why not us?" threatening to overwhelm me. But I've learned to acknowledge these feelings without letting them consume me, to recognize that the past cannot be changed, but the future is still mine to shape. Last month, I ran into Lily at a grocery store. She looked tired, her designer clothes replaced by worn jeans and a faded t-shirt. For a moment, I felt a twinge of the old protectiveness I once reserved for my brothers. She was in the produce section, carefully comparing prices on different brands of apples, a level of financial awareness I'd never seen her exhibit before. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face free of makeup. Without the armor of her usual perfect appearance, she looked younger, more vulnerable, and startlingly like our mother. Then I remembered the bank account, the car, the false accusations against Michael. I nodded politely and continued shopping. She called after me, asking if we could talk, maybe get coffee sometime. Her voice had lost its usual entitled edge, replaced by something that sounded almost like humility. "Just 15 minutes, she said, her eyes darting nervously to the floor and back to my face. "I just want to talk." Part of me wondered if this was another manipulation, another scheme to regain access to what she'd lost. I paused, considering it briefly before telling her that I wasn't ready for that. Maybe someday, but not now. As I walked away, I realized I felt no satisfaction in her apparent struggles, just a profound sadness for what could have been. The weight of my grocery basket pulled at my arm as I moved toward the checkout, my mind heavy with thoughts of parallel universes where our family had been different, where all 5 children had been valued equally, where we'd grown up supporting rather than undermining each other. The sadness wasn't just for my brothers and me, but for Lily too, a child raised to believe her worth came from being preferred, who never learned the true meaning of family. Our parents created this situation by pitting their children against each other, by teaching Lily that she was entitled to whatever she wanted, and teaching us that we deserved nothing. In the end, they lost 4 children who would have loved them unconditionally, and damaged the 5th beyond repair. The true tragedy is that it was all so unnecessary. There was room in our family for all of us to be loved, all of us to be celebrated for our unique strengths and supported through our individual challenges. Instead,
our parents created an artificial scarcity of affection, as if love were a limited resource that could only be bestowed upon one child. The four of us brothers still meet every Sunday for dinner. We take turns hosting, though Michael's cooking is unanimously considered the best. We talk about our weeks, share advice, and sometimes reminisce about the few good memories from our childhood. We've created our own traditions, our own inside jokes, our own definition of family. It's not perfect, but it's ours, built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine care. Last Sunday, we gathered at Michael's new apartment, the first place he's lived that truly feels like his own. The kitchen is small but efficient, and he moved confidently around it as he prepared his signature lasagna. Thomas brought a salad, Jason handled drinks, and I was in charge of dessert, a homemade apple pie that wasn't pretty but tasted like comfort. We ate at a table Michael had refinished himself, sitting in mismatched chairs that somehow worked together perfectly, much like us. Sometimes I wonder if our parents ever truly understand what they lost. 4 sons who would have been there for them in old age, who would have brought grandchildren to visit, who would have carried on family traditions. Instead, they're left with Lily, who still calls them only when she needs money. I imagine them in their house, surrounded by photos of the daughter they prioritized above all else, wondering why their sons have drifted away. Do they ever connect their actions to the consequences? Do they recognize that the favoritism they thought was harmless has cost them a future surrounded by family? Or do they still believe they were right, that Lily deserved everything and we deserved nothing? The last I heard, she was living with them again, having been evicted from her apartment for non-payment of rent. They made their choice just as we made ours. According to Aunt Kathleen, who still keeps us updated occasionally, Lily moved back home after roommate problems, likely code for another situation where her behavior had consequences she wasn't prepared to face. Our parents converted their home office into a bedroom for her, complete with new furniture and decor. The cycle continues, the patterns unchanged. I don't regret standing up to Lily or exposing her behavior to the extended family. What I regret is that it took me so long to realize that I deserved better, that Michael deserved better, that all of us deserved better than to be treated as less than, simply because we weren't the daughter our parents wanted. For years, I accepted the narrative that we were somehow deficient, that we needed to try harder, be better, do more to earn the love that should have been freely given. Breaking free from that mindset was harder than standing up to Lily or confronting our parents. It required dismantling beliefs that had been instilled in me since childhood, recognizing my own worth independent of their approval. If there's one lesson I've learned from all of this, it's that you can't change other people. You can only change how you respond to them. We chose to respond by creating our own family, one based on love rather than obligation or manipulation. And in doing so, we broke the cycle that our parents tried to trap us in. That's not just surviving, that's thriving. Our Sunday dinners, our holiday celebrations, our daily text messages checking in on each other, these are the threads that weave the tapestry of our chosen family. We've created something beautiful from the broken pieces we were given, something stronger and more genuine than what we left behind. In the end, that's the greatest victory of all. Not just escaping a toxic situation, but building something meaningful in its place.